by allowing the state they transferred sentencing from judges to prosecutors.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be done once there was a conviction.
Right. Right.
So
Yep.
they're going to be the sentencing judges,
They
not the three-judge panel that reviews the sentence.
they're enjoying. They ought to name this bill after the gentleman that's used to fence with over here in Prince George's County, who's now deceased. They have a name it after him as a, because essentially, essentially they're enjoying so much these sweetheart deals that they put together. Yeah, this is the sweetheart deal bill. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. Let me do a couple of things that are just administrative, and that is welcome a couple of special guests here tonight. Jamie Sterling is the elected state's attorney for St. Mary's County and is often in my ear about things, and especially about Annapolis. And we appreciate her coming tonight to support us. Karen Piper Mitchell, I would say very much the same. We've known each other for, I'm not saying how long, but Karen is the deputy state's attorney in Charles County, and which is where I live. So I try to stay very close to Karen, and she's wonderful. She's often in Annapolis testifying on bad bills like this one. So, and we of course have victims with us tonight who are going to be willing to come up to the podium and tell some of their stories. Roberta Roper is with us, the founder of our organization. Thank you very much. For 43 years now, I guess, of almost 43 years of service to the victims of Maryland and all of the world, really. She's made a difference across the entire world. We have our board chair, Debbie Tall, is here tonight. And we have a number of our employees here tonight. We have attorneys, advocates, paralegals. Thank you all for coming tonight as well. And I welcome all of the victims here tonight to engage us all in conversation after this is done. I will try to make a few brief comments and then turn the microphone over to our deputy attorney, deputy executive director, Joanna Mupanduki. What we called this for tonight and to bring you here tonight is to tell you that there is a giant get out of jail free card being offered in Annapolis. That giant get out of jail free card is Senate Bill 291. For many years now, we have, this organization and crime victims have fought the concept put forward in Annapolis as second look or second chance legislation. Because we know better than everyone that second look and second chance legislation really isn't second look and second chance. It's 15th look, 15th chance. There are so many ways to diminish a sentence when someone is convicted of a serious offense. And I am not exaggerating that there are that many ways. When I first got into this organization back 42 years ago, I took a look at how many means there were to diminish a sentence in Maryland. At the time, I came up with 13 different means to diminish your sentence once it was given to you. I'm certain it's more like 20 at this point. And the people in Annapolis, for some reason or another, think that it is important to keep letting people out. This bill would apply to everyone who is in prison now on a life sentence or on a life equivalent sentence. That's a term that you use that you hear only from the bureaucrats. A life equivalent sentence is anything 50 years and up. They call those life equivalent sentences. If you serve 20 years on that life sentence, then you get to demand, not request, but demand an entirely new sentencing procedure. You cannot be turned down for it. It will be granted. There will be a procedure in front of a judge, a hearing in front of a judge. It cannot be done by paperwork. It has to be an entire hearing. And if you don't get your way with that hearing, then you can request the hearing again 3 years later, and you can do that 3 times. Now, obviously, there are a number of different problems with that. One of them is from the victim's perspective. How many times does the victim get to go and tell their story in court? How many times does the victim have to do that? Once this 20 years has expired, this person's been in prison for 20 years. Which judge are they going to get? Are they going to get the judge that heard the case 20 years earlier? That judge will be gone off the bench. Are they going to have the same prosecutor? Well, unless maybe you're talking about Karen Piper Mitchell, that prosecutor will no longer be around. And believe me, I thank my lucky stars that we have Karen Piper Mitchell in Charles County. I hope she stays forever. The police won't be there. So the only people who will be there who were knowledgeable in the case in the first place will be the defendant, the convicted criminal, and the victim or the victim's family. This creates a situation, and we've already been down this road in this situation. Our organization has represented a number of defendants in these types of cases from a different bill that's already in existence, where the defendant tells a fantastic fantasy story about what happened in the original case, knowing, hoping, and thinking that there won't be anyone there to contradict him or her when they get to this hearing. I want to take a minute to draw your attention, and I had a handout in the back of the room. I don't know how many of you picked it up, but if you did, you might want to thumb through it with me right now, because that's one of the things I'm going to do, is to sort of draw your attention to who gets these get out of jail free cards. So let's start with Haddon Clark, who is serving 30 years for the murder of Laura Hodeling, who is serving 30 plus 10 years for the murder of 6-year-old Michelle Dorr, and who boasts of murdering a dozen more women that he was not brought to justice on. Haddon will get a get out of jail free card to be played. Vernon Clark, who's no relation to Haddon Clark, murdered 3 women, 70-year-old Dolly Davis, 68-year-old Evelyn Dietrich, and 23-year-old Kathleen Goulden. All 3 victims were sexually assaulted, and he is suspected in at least 3 other murders. He's eligible for this. Charles William Davis Jr. raped and murdered Kathleen Cook, Peggy Pumpian. He's eligible. Anthony Grandison, a drug dealer who had murdered the two people who were going to testify against him at trial, and who were innocent bystanders to his drug dealing. Susan Kennedy, age 19, and Scott Piekowitz, age 27. He was sentenced to death back when Maryland had a death penalty. He's eligible. Heath William Birch murdered an elderly couple in a home invasion. Their names were Robert and Cleo Davis, ages 70 and 77. Sentenced to death, he's eligible as well. Vernon Lee Evans, remember we just a card ago, I should have put these two cards closer together, but I mentioned Anthony Grandison hired someone to murder the two witnesses against him. Well, the person who committed those murders was Vernon Lee Evans, who was hired by Anthony Grandison and murdered those two young people. Raymond Hopewell. Raymond's rather famous up in Baltimore City. 5 murders, multiple rapes of elderly victims, sentenced to life without parole. He's eligible. Damon Anquan Wilson is someone that I put in here because he murdered someone who was a friend of not only mine, but I know Karen Piper Mitchell was a friend of hers as well. He murdered Gail Cook. Gail was one of the first crime victim advocates in the state and a wonderful one in Charles County. He's eligible. He gets the get out of jail free card to try to play it. How about this one? I think probably all of you know this one. And those of you who I hope are watching the news media, I hope this one rings home for you, because Jared Ramos, the Capital Gazette mass murderer, is eligible for this. He shotgunned to death 5 people and injured 2 others at the Capital Gazette. I'm sorry, I don't have the year in here, but probably 6-7 years ago now. Now this slide I had in here from an earlier time that we went through this, but this one is Jerry Lee Beatty. And Jerry bears speaking about to you all tonight. Jerry's already eligible for release because of that earlier bill that I spoke about. Jerry's already applied. Jerry was the murderer, torturer, rapist of Stephanie Ann Roper, the young woman whose horrific story and the terrible treatment of the court system of her parents, including Vince and Roberta Roper, generated this organization and a nationwide trend towards granting greater victims' rights, crime victims' rights. Jerry's already applied. Jerry's already had his hearing. And Jamie Sterling is actually representing the state in the matter. We are thankful and grateful for her help in the matter. We actually represented Roberta for her victims' rights in the matter, and we were awaiting a decision that will probably take quite a while before we get there. The next one I included in here is Desmond Perry. I included Desmond because Desmond has already been released under that earlier bill. And Desmond served 20 years for a first-degree murder. Desmond apparently at random murdered Willie Baskerville, pulled up next to him in a car and shot him to death. Didn't know who he was. Willie's mother, Joyce Conyers, serves on our board of directors. But I want to bring home a surprise to you about this bill. This bill does not just apply to those people. It does not just, in the strictest sense, apply to anybody who has been in prison for more than 20 years. Because there's a provision in the bill that allows anyone to get out at any time on any sentence, as long as the prosecutor's office is in agreement for them to do so. So the surprise to all of that is that essentially everybody in prison on life sentences, life without parole, those more than 50-year sentences that they call life equivalent sentences, they're all eligible at any time for release, as long as they've either served 20 years or there's some sort of a deal with the prosecutor's office to release them. Now, 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I wouldn't have been afraid of that. I'm deathly afraid of it now because we've seen the deals that prosecutors will put together to release people, horrific offenders, from prison. I'm going to add one more that I don't have a slide for because I want to drive home the fact that this get out of jail free card is available to anyone. Garrett Wilson is serving his life sentence or his multiple life sentences up in Hagerstown somewhere, I think. Garrett and I went to high school together, and he seemed like a very nice guy, not a bad guy at all, an intelligent guy. Garrett is serving 2 life sentences for murdering 2 of his infant children for the insurance money. He's eligible for this. Now, one of the things that the proponents of these bills say is that as the prison population ages, they're much less likely to commit new offenses. Recidivate is what it's called, recidivism or recidivating. I want you to know that we looked up their own statistics on recidivism. And it's true that the recidivism rate goes down as people age. But the highest category that they hold statistics for is the age group 65 to 75 at the time of release. 15% recidivism rate. Age 55 to 65, 25% recidivism rate. Age 35 to 45, 31% recidivism rate. So, and we are getting people released in those age groups. I have researched recently a case, the offender's name Byron Alton Bowie Jr. Byron murdered someone back in 1992, I believe it was, Frederick County. And he obtained his release as well under the previous law that we've been fighting for years, after 22 years of incarceration. Within 18 months, Byron Alton Bowie Jr. was arrested for threatening to burn down an entire building with everyone inside and kill everyone inside. These are the people who are eligible for the get out of jail free card. I understand that the counter arguments are also going to include the fact that not everyone who has one of these hearings is going to be released. Why is it that we are letting that even be an issue? Why should they be released? What does the life sentence mean? And what does it mean to Marylanders? What does it mean to the public? I promise you, I can't, we don't have the money to do a survey, but if we did, I promise you that if we said to Marylanders, how much time should someone serve on a life sentence? I promise you 70%, maybe 80%, maybe 90% would say life, because they want truth in sentencing. They understand that those who are given a life sentence, those who are given 100 years, we're talking about rapists, multiple murderers, child murderers, child molesters, and those whose depravity knows no end. I wish and I hope for all of them to be rehabilitated in one sense of the word in prison. But we have to get beyond the concept that a rehabilitation means that they ought to ever walk the same streets with the public again. You're going to hear from another one tonight that another one of our victims who is very supportive of us, but also has a horrific story from a different perspective, and that is that I didn't talk about. I talked about multiple murderers, talked about child murderers. What about hate murderers? What about someone who is so consumed with hate for race reasons, for any other reason, that they commit a murder? Do you think that the Maryland public thinks that any of them should ever walk the free streets again? I ask you all who are sitting here, I ask everyone who is within the sound of my voice to please do what you can to get your legislators to vote against this bill. Because if you don't, it has a very bright prospective future in Maryland. We will continue to fight, regardless of whether it gets passed or not. We'll continue to fight for you when you, God forbid, become a crime victim, or anyone you know becomes a crime victim. We'll be there to help you. But please make our fight easier and make it so that these 3,600, let me get the figure right. The number of people that this applies to, the 3,628 people who are now serving life sentences or life equivalent sentences in Maryland all get this get out of jail free card. I'm going to call on Joanna now to take over and give you a little different perspective than mine.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your support and coming out this evening. I know that you're very busy. I wanted to just take a moment and share just a little bit, just what an honor it has been to be a victim rights attorney at Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. And I was previously a prosecutor and even left Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center to return to being a prosecutor, and then came back here because I very much enjoyed that work as well. But there's nothing greater than helping a victim's family when they have nobody else to turn to. They're in a foreign world of the criminal justice system. Usually, it's their first interaction with the rules. They don't understand the laws, and they certainly don't understand the sentencing. People think that when a judge says, I'm sentencing you to a life sentence, suspend all but 50 years, that that defendant is walking away to serve 50 years. And they understand what we call here in Maryland diminution credits, or good time credits, as it's often referred to in other states. And they think, okay, that will be a small token of what's taken off. But in Maryland, that's 50% just for a violent crime. That they're not going to be serving any more than 50% of that sentence. And to have to explain that to a victim's family is very difficult. And not only is it that, but they have multiple opportunities to have that sentence reconsidered. There are multiple opportunities for them to be released on various types of parole. And every time that those things happen, the victim's family is notified. They have to come back to court, or they have to go to a parole hearing, and they have to relive that horrible time in their life. And oftentimes it's when they think, okay, I'm healing, I'm being able to move forward. It's 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and yet they're still without their loved one. They don't get to go visit their loved one. They don't get to say hello to them on the phone, through a video chat, none of that. That person is gone from their life entirely. And it's very difficult to go through those conversations with families to explain that. And this will be just another opportunity that as soon as a defendant has served 20 years, now they get another resentencing. And not only that, they get to have this hearing every 3 years. And this is in addition to any parole hearings that they are also eligible for, which there are additional bills out now to increase the opportunities for defendants to get parole hearings as well. Once they turn 60, they want them to have parole hearings every 2 years. So there's just this unending cycle of opportunities for defendants to be let out. There's this push, which does not make much sense because the Maryland prisons are not overcrowded. There are slightly over 15,000 people in Maryland prisons right now, which is a 20% decrease from the height of the prison population in 2003 in Maryland prisons. So this is not the same concern that there might have once been. So I just want to share that perspective, and that it's staggering to think that the legislators in Annapolis do not consider the innocent crime victims and their families first. Instead, are concerned about letting out those people who have committed these crimes. And they're not just people who've committed crimes, but the most heinous crimes, murders, and who have taken the life of innocent people who are forever gone from this world. So I appreciate your support. We are going to be in Annapolis tomorrow, so January 30th, in front of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee. The chairman is Chairman West, so we will be putting out more social media posts, but if you want to call and let your voice be heard, that would certainly be appreciated. You can also go on to the Maryland Legislative website and send emails as well to committee members, as long as to your own delegates and your own Senate members as well. So thank you for your support, and I'm going to turn it back to Kurt, and we have several victims' families here who want to speak. Thank you.
The chairman is Senator Smith from Montgomery County. And please, anyone who can get there to Annapolis tomorrow at 1 o'clock, even after 1 o'clock. The hearings drag on sometimes, and if you can show up at 3 o'clock, show up at 3 o'clock. We'll probably still be there. But show up to let them know that you're interested and you're concerned about this bill. I'm going to offer to Roberta Roper, it's obviously an honor to let Roberta take the podium. Roberta is our guiding star and has been for 42 years. And we appreciate her long and hard work for the crime victims across the world, really.
First of all, thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm compelled to express my opposition to this bill, not only based on my family's experience, but on behalf of the many, many victims and their families that we have served over the past 42 years. As Kurt indicated, this organization was originally founded by my husband Vince and I as the Stephanie Roper Committee and Foundation in tribute to the daughter that was brutally taken from us in 1982. I have spent the last 4 decades of my life advocating for victims' rights and services and being a voice for those who have been forever silenced. Bills like Senate Bill 291 are not only devastating to scores of victims and survivors, but destroying public trust and confidence in the criminal justice system. As Kurt and others have explained, this bill authorizes an individual to petition a court or demand a court for a hearing to reduce their sentence and to have that privilege repeated every 3 years. So both victims and members of the public can correctly say, where is the truth in sentencing in policies like this? Where is it? It's not there. And victims and survivors, no less than their rapists and killers, deserve compassion and some sense of finality and resolution. I wasn't going to say this because we're focusing on 291, but Jamie's here, and I have to thank Jamie Sterling for leading the effort in one of our daughter's killers, Jerry Beatty. And in December of 2024, after more than 42 years, I was given the opportunity to exercise my right on behalf of my family to tell this person and this court the tremendous impact of his crimes on our family. I can't tell you how important that was, because at the trial of Stephanie's killers, we were excluded from observing the trial and silenced at sentencing. So it was extremely therapeutic for me to look into my daughter's killer's eyes and have him hear my voice. So Jamie, thank you. And Victor Stone, who represented my family's interest. Victor is one of MCVRC's staff attorneys. So victims and survivors, having suffered devastating consequences, shouldn't have to endure endless re-victimization. They shouldn't have to do the cost of having to publicly dredge up their worst memories, to rip open the partially healed psychological wounds, and to recount the human indignity and horrible things that their loved ones struggled with. And that's what we do every day of our lives. You never forget. And so I urge all of you to have your voices heard on behalf of those who have been forever silenced. Let your legislators know your opposition to Senate Bill 291. Thank you.
Let me correct another faux pas that I made, and that is we have another board member here. George Langvine is on our board of directors, and we're very proud and honored to have George. I'm going to open the mic to really anyone who wants to come up, but I would like the Collinses to come up first and tell their story, because I don't know that there's a more poignant story about why this shouldn't happen. I mean, they're all poignant in one way or another, but one of the things that this bill does is deny the truth of what happened at the original event and sort of put blinders on and well, let's not worry about that. Let's look at everything else having to do with the development of this person since the person's been in prison. It shouldn't be, it isn't so, and the Marylanders don't want it that way. And if you can say that you want it that way after hearing the Collins story, then I don't know whether I belong in the same Maryland as you do. So please come on up.
Good evening. I count it a privilege to stand here and share my story. And Roberta, we will be forever grateful that you were a safe haven, my husband and I, when the most horrific thing happened to us, to any survivor. My name is Dawn Collins, and I am the very proud mother of Lieutenant Richard W. Collins III. Lieutenant Collins was commissioned in May 2017, and it was truly his happiest day as well as us, his mom and dad. Richard is third generation military. At that commissioning, he took an oath to defend this nation against all. Remember the word I'm using, all. But there was someone that did not think that Richard should live. Not that he knew Richard, didn't know that Richard was a commissioned officer, an intel officer, didn't care. This individual took Richard's life at the flagship university, the University of Maryland, College Park. Think about that. This is the place that you're supposed to go to learn, to expand, to know the other. But this, what I call heinous crime, took place on the flagship university. Not only did he take Richard from us, he took him from this country because he was a servant of this country. He terrorized the entire state of Maryland. Why do I say that? Because individuals that attend the University of Maryland College Park are still to this day, reeling from the effects of what took place on that campus. He also took a son of Bowie State University, the university that my son was ready to graduate from. But he did not care. And I think going through this entire process, one of the most poignant and disgusting things my husband and I experienced when a hate crime charge was thrown out of court because the statute did not meet the criteria. We actually saw members, supporters of this monster clap and high-five each other. And again, remember this in closing. My son pledged his life to defend this very nation. And in closing, there's a saying that they have in the Army, leave no one behind. And I'm asking the legislatures to not leave Lieutenant Collins behind and say no to SB-291. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Richard W. Collins, Jr., the parent of First Lieutenant Richard Collins. And I would just add to what my wife shared with you that I'm looking at this bill from the perspective of an average citizen. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a politician. But from my perspective as an average citizen, just like everyone in this audience or everyone that's viewing this through the webinar, I fail to comprehend what this bill is hoping to achieve that serves the interest of the health and safety of the public. I can't for the life of me identify how this bill helps to protect those like us from those who would do harm. Now, one thing I'm going to say is for every crime, there's probably multiple sides to the story. But I hold a higher, I guess you could say, standard when someone chooses to take the life or to injure personally another individual, particularly who's innocent, who's done nothing wrong. I can't for the life of me understand how we could have a system of governance that looks at those facts and disregard, in many cases, actions that are so heinous that the average human doesn't dare think about those actions. How is that possible? And I understand that there's this movement that feels there are too many people incarcerated. Our prisons or our jails are too full. That may or may not be the case. But I think this bill is the absolute wrong response to that problem. This is not a question of incarcerating people who are innocent or the guilt is in question. These are people who've already been convicted in a court of law. But because you've determined that somehow, with the passage of time, that the crimes they committed, the lives they took, the people they raped, the people they injured, is less serious. The passage of time. Totally ignoring the impact of the lives that are no longer here as a result of their choice. That was a choice. Now, I know we live in a society that tends to pride itself on its civility, their compassion, their willingness to turn the other cheek, so to speak. But I would argue there are some things that are beyond the pale for looking the other way or turning the other cheek. To take another innocent life for which you have no authority or right is a crime on top of a crime. And I'm going to close by saying, in order for us to maintain a civil society, we're going to have to, as a people, develop the resolve to stand up and say that we each have to be accountable for our actions. Be accountable for our actions. Because too many lives are destroyed, not just the victims' lives. Don't think it's just the victim who we bury, because when we buried our son, I died that day. What you're looking at standing before you is the shell of the person that existed before. So I'll leave you with this thought. The comment of, or the concept of there being a second chance being extended to the perpetrators of these heinous acts has to be weighed against the concept of how many people will never get a second chance because of their actions. Thank you.
The time has come to open this microphone to anyone else who wants to tell their story. We are very hopeful. We are live streaming this, so we have an audience and we have the ability, of course, for the press to see this. We are going to ensure that the people, the legislators in Annapolis know of the existence of this. We'll make sure that we urge them to watch this before they ever make a decision on this bill. So please, now is the time. If you are interested in coming forward and telling your story for the purpose of helping the cause, please do so. I will also say that to the people who may be watching the live stream now, or to the people who will see this tomorrow, because it'll be posted on YouTube, get there, help us, come help us. We'll be there fighting, as we always are. We have been for 42 years, 43 years. Don't leave it up to us. Come and help us. We need you, and we need you to help us in Annapolis tomorrow, and we need your help generally. But tomorrow would be a really nice day for you to show your support. We appreciate it. Opening the mic. How are you?
My name is Melody Monroe. My aunt Dawn, her sister-in-law, and her 3-year-old and 4-year-old children, Shayla, Shakur, Sakila, were brutally murdered in a quadruple homicide in PG County, August 6, 2010. It forever changed our lives. We went to court, thought everything was going to be done. For this last year, I've sat in court and heard how someone who assisted in taking their lives has become the seamstress at the jail, has graduated from this class and graduated from that class. Shakur and Shayla never got to start school. Shayla just graduated this year, but she never will. Dawn has missed her children blossom. Her daughter's a lawyer, grandkids. She's never get to see them again. She didn't get a second chance. My little cousins, Shayla and Shakur. Shakur died 6 days before his 5th birthday. We actually buried him on his birthday. To have to relive this, I would not wish it on my worst enemy. Just when we're thinking things are okay, we're no court. You know what? I just happened to go on Maryland Judicial Court case search to find out that we were back in court. No one had notified us that we were going back to court. That this person was asking for a post-conviction hearing to have her sentence changed. Why does she get a second chance? We don't. We didn't ask for this to happen. Aunt Dawn, she's the life of the family. The parties, the food, macaroni and cheese, just everybody loves her. She didn't get a second chance. And I don't think it's fair that anybody else that is willing to take the life of children, 3 and 4, brutally murdered, should think that they should ever walk the street again. Not the same streets that I walk on. And as long as I live, I'll be at these things. My children know to come to these things if I'm not here. To fight for our rights, to know what's going on in court, and to make sure that these people don't get a second chance because we didn't get a second chance. That's all I have to say.
That person gets a get out of jail free card. The person who did that gets a Senate Bill 291 get out of jail free card. I promise you that whether the judge grants it or not, this family will be tormented as they go back to court again and again to fight the get out of jail free card. I have to, I'm going to try to supplement some stories here a little bit. I hope the Collins don't get mad at me because I think they left something out that's important to people who don't know the story. Their son was murdered because he was black. Their son was murdered by someone who was a white supremacist. Is there a reason why that person should ever see free soil again? I want to tell just one other little story that that I know that Karen Piper Mitchell knows as well, because she and I had the same contact, if you will. And Brittany has allowed me to tell this story time and again. But the story of Brittany Green, who, when she was 8 years old, was sleeping in her bed with her mother. And someone came in and knifed her mother to death multiple times as Brittany was in the bed getting covered by her mother's blood and screaming. Brittany's been to Annapolis, and Brittany has said to them, "Why do you make me keep going back to court? Why do I have to go back to court?" Brittany's now probably 25, 26 years old, something like that. And the last time I went to court with her was maybe 6 years ago, and it was her 5th time since being 8 years old to have to go back to court to tell her story to keep that person in prison. Why? Victims are entitled to final judgment, finality, to be able to walk away, to be able to ensure that they don't walk into the Safeway or the 7-Eleven and run into the person who murdered their family. I'm sorry, I'm on the soapbox again. I should open the floor again. Anyone else that would like to tell their story, please come on up. Jamie Sterling's going to come up, and Jamie, once again, is the state's attorney for St. Mary's County.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jamie Sterling. I'm the state's attorney for St. Mary's County. It is an honor to be here. I am thrilled that, Kurt, you literally took my call when I called to say, please have a news conference on this, because it's so critically important. I like to give practical advice. So we have these news conferences, and why are we doing this? What's the purpose of doing this? There's really a few purposes. I think we can all agree, everyone that's in this room, and hopefully everyone who's watching, this law is a terrible law. It is a fraud on the American criminal justice system. It's sad to say that we call it the criminal justice system, because it looks like everywhere we turn, it's justice for the criminals. Where is justice for the victims? This is another example that we are re-victimizing victims. But so here's the practical advice. We can continue to have these news conferences. We can continue to support each other and hear these stories. And I encourage you to please do that. Do not stop. But those stories are not going to be heard unless you get it to the right people. So for this purpose, in order for us to stop this horrible bill from becoming a law and flooding the courts with these hearings that the prosecutors will have to attend to, because the law says that they shall have a hearing, which means you will have to defend yourself as the victim and the victim's family, defend the conviction over and over again. So what do? You need to write to your legislators. For the Senate bill, it's a 2-day law. You have to have had registered 2 days ago. So the hearing for the Senate bill is actually tomorrow. So unless you have pre-registered yesterday, you will not be able to provide oral or written testimony. What you can do is for the House bill, you can go ahead and please follow the House bill. And I'm going to ask Kurt and his organization to please send out a blast email prior to when that date is set. And everyone needs to submit written testimony. What else you can do is when you go to Annapolis, you can give these stories and share these stories, but you need to share the social media posts. You need to share your story so that someone is hearing it, so that you get as many people as possible to share their story, to go and find a legislator. If you can't testify during the hearing, you need to make an appointment and go see your legislator and explain to them why this is a horrible, horrific law. It is extremely difficult for us, as you well know, when a crime is committed, there are many things that has to happen. We have to first find the suspect. We have to identify him. Then he gets a fair trial, which is what should happen in this country. They get the fair trial and then they're convicted. And then after conviction, they're sentenced. There are many steps that occur, and in order to even get a conviction or to get a sentence that's substantial and one that's not true in the actual years, it's very difficult. But for then that entire process to be flipped upside down is a complete fraud in what we are told to victims and what we have been telling victims as we are pursuing these cases. So I urge each of you to take action, and you're going to do that by submitting written testimony, by going over there and giving oral testimony, sharing these videos, sharing your stories to anyone that will listen. And then after they hear you, have them write to the legislators. Because the way that this bill becomes a law is when they vote on it. So what we need to do is we need to find every legislator and ask them to vote no. Thank you all. And please let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
One last call. Come on up. How are you, dear?
Good evening. My name is Deidre Jackson, and I wasn't planning to speak when I came out today. I was just coming out to kind of learn a little more, support other families and this organization that has been a rock to me in my journey. But on the way here, I got a text message from my attorney with some news involving my case. So I just wanted to say, in September of 2021, my son was murdered in Charles County, Maryland. And for a million different reasons, we have not concluded our case yet. It's one of those things where it's like everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong, and none of it being really anybody's fault per se, but just stuff happens. And so a lot of stuff has happened. But we were scheduled to go to trial the first week of March of this year for a second time. I got some news today that that's likely not going to happen. And I had gotten myself to a point where that's how I was coping. I know it's coming. I know it's coming. I'm finally going to get it. I'm finally going to get it. I'm finally going to get it. And then I read about this bill, and then I'm like, well, even if I get it, am I really getting it? Because you don't know, you know? So I was kind of concerned on that end, but now I'm just scared because I don't know what's going to happen. And my emotions are just all over the place, especially today, because it's just so many unknowns and so many things that have gone on. And it's just like, for our family, it's like everything that's happened have been, well, the person that is responsible, what about what he feels? What about what he deserves? What about what he should get? Never about what about Deidre? What about Eric's dad? What about Eric's 7 sisters? What about Eric's 2 brothers? What about us in this process? And so it is really important to us and to me to oppose this bill, because we can't take any more unknowns and not knowing. And I feel like my son, as well as my family, deserve to know that justice is served. That's just what it means. And that when you get that sentence, then that's what it is. So I'm going to take my children and I'm going to go to Annapolis tomorrow, and I'm going to continue every chance that I can to support this organization if they supported me. And I thank you guys for everything that you've done, and I thank you for allowing me to be here today and to speak.
Thank you, dear. Remember to wear purple when you come, so they know when they look out at the crowd that who it is. One more. We have one more. Good stand.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry I'm a little late coming from a different event. So if you notice, I have my son's shirt on, and I had to do something earlier. So I'm still emotional from that. But I come to speak on behalf of myself and all families that have lost loved ones. I can say this year, it's been 18 years. And when I talked to a representative from crime victims, I told them, in 18 years, this was the first year Christmas morning I did not wake up crying and depressed, because my son's birthday is the day after Christmas. My son was killed on Mother's Day. Through this journey, I created a company called Comfort Creations via Peace Pillows. And I get to donate a peace pillow all across this country to crime victims. But as I donate these peace pillows, I have to relive my son's death. I have family members, I have friends, I have coworkers, I have people that I have met just through giving them a peace pillow, from a baby that's 2 years old to somebody that's 30, 40, 50, 60 years old that's gunned down by senseless gun violence. Cold cases like mine, cases of people that have been captured and is serving time, but then everybody says that the time their loved one got was too much time. But I just told you it took me 18 years to wake up and not cry on Christmas morning. And you talk about time? I don't get that time back with my son. He never had kids. I will never get to know what an offspring of his look like. But for all the pillows that I have to make, like the U.S. postal worker, when I had to go to her house and give her 7-year-old daughter a pillow of her mom, and you want to say, put a bill that will do a reconsideration for these people? Did you reconsider the fact when you pulled that trigger against our loved ones? There was no reconsideration. And I will definitely be in Annapolis and be able to speak on behalf of myself and all other families. I started this journey for mothers because I know what it's like when I clutched my only son as a baby to hold him. And now my only son is not here. And I started out with mothers, but then I saw it fathers. I have a father that he lost his daughter. 2 weeks later, he lost his son. I've been mentoring him through my group of other parents. And he couldn't take it no more. And he jumped off the 295 bridge and killed himself. This is a hard pill to swallow, losing a loved one. And there is no thing to saying you overcome. You only at one point in time may come to a place where you can cope. And I try to share my testimony and my strength, hoping that I could get somebody else in a place of hope where I am, that I can honor Dion now. I can honor the 21 years that I spent with him and use the best memories of him to keep going. So I hope all of us can make it to Annapolis tomorrow. If you have a problem with transportation, I'm retired. Please, I'm volunteering right now. And if you need a ride, let's ride together. But let's do this collectively and let's stand for crime victims and parents and families of crime victims.
Okay, seeing no others? No others? Victor, you want to say something? Come on up. Victor Stone is our secret weapon. He's one of our genius attorneys.
I felt that I needed to make it clear to the people listening how misleading Senate Bill 291 is and why it should not be enacted. The second victim who got up here and showed you pictures of her 4- and 3-year-old nieces and nephew who were killed and her sister, that case is in and pending in Prince George's County right now. It's pending there after the person did not take advantage after they were sentenced of a 3-judge sentencing review panel, maybe because she thought she was going to get the murderer, thought they were going to get a higher sentence. She did take advantage of a reconsideration before the sentencing judge 5 years after she went to jail. The judge reviewed everything and declined to reduce that sentence. Then she came back in now and accused the judge of misconduct. She's since dropped that, but now she's accusing her attorneys that she had of misconduct, who at the time she knew how to tell the judge, are you satisfied with your attorney? You think your attorney's fine? Oh, yes, I have no problem. My attorney's done a great job. And she signed that off in a document that's on file in the case. Why do I bring that up as relevant to this? Because she hasn't been in jail 20 years. She's only been in jail 15 years. Oh, by the way, she's already been seen separately 2 separate times by the parole commission, who's denied her parole. So there's 4 opportunities. And if you count her attack on her current attorney, that's 5 opportunities. And she hasn't served 15 years yet. Well, she's going to, if this bill passes, she's going to have a 6th look, because this bill provides, and I'll quote, notwithstanding any other provisions of law, an individual who does not meet the requirements of the law is eligible if a state's attorney files a motion to reduce the sentence. She's only been in jail 15 years, but the state's attorney in this case is siding with her and saying she ought to have her sentence reduced. So she won't even get to the 20-year point, and she'll have her 6th opportunity to have her sentence reviewed with the state's attorney standing up behind her, even though a prior state's attorney successfully prosecuted her in connection with the murder of 2 children and 2 women, 4 people. When the person who actually pulled the trigger, when his gun jammed before he killed the last child, he said to her standing there, give me your gun. And she did. She handed over her gun so he could shoot the last person. So this is not a second look bill. that's a misrepresentation. This is a repetitive forever bill, and it's not a bill that's a second look after 20 years, because in the case I have, and in many other cases in Prince George's County, the state's attorney's office has been siding with the defendants. And as long as they do that, they can come in and ask under this statute for reconsideration of the sentence after 6 months, after a year, as often as they want, up to 3 times. So to call this a second look after 20 years is frankly not being candid with the victims and the citizens of the state of Maryland. Thank you.
Just one other thing I want to draw your attention to. You know, we have in our conference room at our office almost 300 pictures of people on the walls who were murder victims that we have worked with, represented their families over the years. That we estimate is probably about 1/3 of the victims that we have represented over the 42 years that we've been in the business of helping people and drying people's tears. Of those cases, and I guess I'm the fossil. I've been around for all of those 42 years. Those cases, I'm the one that I'm aware of that it has been back to court the most. We worked with him last year. He has been in court 23 times to keep the murderer of his mother in prison. That's cruel. That's heartless of the system. It's cruel enough when 8-year-old Brittany gets to go 5 or 6 times. It's got to stop. People are entitled to a final judgment on these things, and Senate Bill 291 is purely intended to do away with the finality altogether, to be able to revisit the issue time and time and time again. We are very honored and pleased that we have a new employee who has come to us from working for the state of Maryland for many years in many different capacities in the area of criminal justice, who I see she wants to say a few words, and her name is Gloria Luckett. Please welcome Gloria Luckett.
Good afternoon, everybody. Normally, I'm a woman of few words, but I am so inspired and so thankful for Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center giving me the opportunity to help with this work. And I am serious about the business of this business, and nothing can turn me around. Normally, like I said, I'm a woman of a few words, but you all have inspired me so much to come up to share the story of my family. Back in 1997, my 3-year-old nephew, the sweetest little thing. And let me say, a week prior to the incident that took place, he was with me at my home, and I remember playing with him. He's on my back and giving him horsey back rides and just enjoying himself. And a week later, I'm in my kitchen preparing dinner for my children, and I'm listening to the news as I'm preparing dinner, and I hear the story of a 3-year-old kid that was down the basement playing with matches and set the house on fire. And so I said to myself, what idiot allows a kid to be in a basement by himself playing with matches? 10 minutes later, my phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and it's my mom screaming that his name was James, that James is dead. And so the family came together to try to figure out what happened, because at that time, he was spending some time with his godmother and godfather. And so, they investigated the fire and everything, and they were closing the case. So I called the godmother. I needed more because it didn't make sense to me. And she became indignant. She became indignant with me. And so my family and I, we went back to Baltimore Police Department and demanded a full investigation. And come to find out, the stepmother and stepfather beat him to death. They beat him to death, laid him in a bed for one day, then took him to the basement. And it was a type of home where it was 2 apartments. And the lady on the first level had just had brain surgery. And they set this house ablaze and to cover up the crime that they had done. You know, my family never got a final view. We never got to see him in the casket or anything. We never got to see any of this. And in the court, and we went to court, you know, just like this bill, what makes me angry is when let's make a deal. When you let's make a deal, when you have the facts, everything, you have the evidence of what these 2 monsters did to a 3-year-old baby. And she ended up with 15 years. He ended up with 25 years. And they allowed her to go to Patuxent Institute, which is like a therapeutic program. She did a total of 7 years. He did 10. You know, we, like with Miss Roper, the family was left out. We never got Vine or knew. My sister was in East Point Mall, and the godmother walked up to her and said, "Oh, aren't you James' mother?" That's when my sister, we found out that they were out of prison. You murder a 3-year-old child, burn him where the family gets no view, and you get to walk out of prison in 7 and 10 years? You know, this is devastating. So this is where my passion comes from. This is serious work, Ms. Roper, I understand. And I thank you for what you've done for Marylanders. It had not been for you and that fight and that love of that child, nothing would change. You know, nothing would change. So I thank you for what you did. I remember seeing you and during those early years, that fight that you had, that vigor that you have and you still have, and that passion that you're sending our way to carry on your fight. And you have my word. I am serious about the business of this business. Thank you.
One of the great ironies of the story that Roberta told you about the fact that she was not able to give a victim impact statement was one of the first bills that we were able to pass in Annapolis was a bill making victim impact statements mandatory when the victim wanted an impact statement. That bill, that legislation spread across the nation. And so that on our 40th anniversary, a number of years ago, another victims' rights advocate in another part of the country sent back his salutations to Roberta saying, every victim who has had the privilege of giving a victim impact statement owes a debt of gratitude to Roberta Roper. And she is the inspiration for so much of what we do, and we are going to lead the fight tomorrow, and we will not give in. Thank you all for listening who are not here. Thank you all for attending who are here. And God bless you all. We'll see you in the fight tomorrow.